What's going on, guys? Anastasio here with FlytPath.com. Now, I recently posted a first flight video of this right here, the AUTEL Nano Plus, and I actually put it head to head with this one right here, which is the DJI Mini 2. In my opinion, I think this is kind of where these two sit as far as the category goes. But I know a lot of people have been talking about you should compare it more to the Air 2S because it does have a little bit bigger of a sensor and a camera than the Mini 2, and it probably sits best in between this right here, in between the Mini 2 and the Air 2S. So I do want to show you guys a little side-by-side of these two drones right here, as well as talk to you a little bit more about the Nano Plus, some of my thoughts after flying it for the past couple weeks. And if you're new to my channel, my name is Anastasio. I do a lot of drone tech tips, tutorials, and product reviews right here on this channel. So if that's something that interests you, please consider subscribing and also hitting that bell to be notified when I post new videos. So first things first, let me just show you a quick little side-by-side comparison of these two drones right here, shot at my local park. And there it is, just a little side-by-side of these two drones. Let me know your thoughts on the quality of the video coming out of these drones. Let me know in the comments section down below. Now, the one thing I did notice with the Nano Plus, even when I was putting it up against the Mini 2, it definitely has a lot more, I would say, in-camera sharpening than the Mini 2 does. And some people will interpret that as just higher or better quality. But it doesn't always mean that, mainly because of the fact that when you also bring it into post-production, sometimes that over-sharpening is not exactly what you want. You can actually sometimes add a little sharpening in post, and that's the reason why some people do like the Mini 2. So we'll start off with the remote control, and this is the same remote control that you would get if you have the AUTEL Lite Plus. So if you saw my comments on that, exact same here. Of course, we don't have any areas to put the sticks. The cord, you need to update that to a 90-degree cord so it doesn't kink when you're closing this up. And the one thing here too is if you're used to the Mini or the MAVIC lineup where you do have the switch to go from cinematic, normal, and sport mode, we don't have a switch here, but you can change the speed and program it here on that function button. Highly recommend doing that. For me right now, I have a single tap will switch it from the speeds, so it'll go from smooth to normal to sport. And then my double tap for me is changing the camera degree 90 degrees. Now, once again, this is not a full review because just like the AUTEL Lite Plus, we are still missing some features on here. We do not have dynamic track, which is that ability to have that follow me function. We do have obstacle avoidance, which I haven't done a full obstacle avoidance test. It does work as far as just having basic obstacle avoidance, mainly because I do want to wait until the dynamic track is installed, the firmware is updated, before I test out that as well as the obstacle avoidance. Next, we'll talk about the build quality of these drones right here. Now, coming in at 200 or under 250 grams. This one, as far as AUTEL, does have that more, I would say, plasticky feel and sound to it compared to the Mini. Also, when we're looking at the gimbal kind of sits out there and it feels, just doesn't feel as like solid as the gimbal that's on the Mini, mainly because everything is exposed. You see like the wires, you see the dampeners and the really thin brackets. So when you look at the gimbal It just kind of feels like it's hanging out there a little bit more than some of the other drones. One thing I did notice too is the battery compartment. It does not go in as smooth as you'd like it to. So every time I would go out there and try to swap out the batteries really quick, it'll always get stopped right there. As you can see, it stops, and it's not really the battery. What it is, it's the top of the drone is so thin that it doesn't slide in perfectly. It'll stop. So you kind of have to like give the body a little bit of a squeeze to open up that, you know, that gap right here, and then it'll slide in a little bit better. And the next thing I talked about in my previous video on the Lite Plus, we have the same thing here. When you do a firmware update on this drone, it does take some time. So the main firmware update or download, it ended up taking me about 30 to 35, 40 minutes to do. And then the one thing here is that you actually have to do that firmware update on each battery. So each battery takes another 15, 20 minutes or so. So when there is a firmware update, just know that it's not as quick as some of the DJI ones where you would normally do one big update and then you would do a couple small ones. It might be the remote control or the battery, but they're normally really quick. Here, you actually have to do almost a full update on each battery. Now, as far as flight characteristics, and I'm going to compare this more to the Evo 2, definitely a big jump on the Lite Plus and the Nano. It's a lot more responsive to what you're doing in the air, and I think just overall, it just has a lot better feel when flying this drone. Before, even on the Evo 2, even just going in straight lines sometimes were a little more difficult, but definitely has been, you know, refined a little bit more with the Lite and the Nano. So there's definitely a plus side on that. However, the one thing I did notice on both drones, especially with the Nano though, is there's some issues going on with the speed of the drone. Now it's hard to explain really because of the fact that I think if you've ever flown like a DJI drone, it has the Cine, it has the normal, it has the sport. And there's 3 separate categories, and whenever you switch over to those categories, you really feel the difference. You can feel the difference in the Cine. It's nice and slow and smooth. Normal, it's still kind of punchy. And then sport, of course, you can whip it around. On the AUTEL, when you're in the smooth mode, it's almost going like way too slow. And then you jump up to the normal, and even though it seems like you're going fast, it's not really that fast. And then sport mode actually isn't that much faster than normal mode. And it is kind of a tricky thing to explain, but if you've ever flown a DJI drone, like I mentioned, I hate comparing the two, but you kind of have to, is that when you do switch it to Cine and normal and sport, you know and you feel those 3 separate speeds, where here, you're punching it in normal and you're like, why are you not moving? It's showing me speeds, and then it's fluctuating a little bit more. And then I put it to smooth and it's just like way too slow. So there's definitely, you know, some things going on there that they need to define the speeds a little bit more on these drones, actually on both drones. And of course, another big positive of the AUTEL drones is that geofencing or lack thereof geofencing. So if you are in a area that might be regulated or you're not able to get the drone up in the air, if you're flying a DJI ones, ideally with the geofencing on the AUTEL drones, you're still able to at least put it up in the air. You'll get warnings and things like that, but I believe as of right now, you can still fly in some of these areas. So of course, if you're worried about the restrictions or restricted areas of flying, AUTEL will still have that feature above DJI. For the price of this drone, is almost twice the price of the Mini 2. If it's that marginal difference as far as video quality goes, but you're sacrificing things like the speed or not having dynamic track or not having the features there yet. And also I've talked about this on the AUTEL Lite, some of the quick shots just not refined yet. And I always feel like I'm saying this when I talk about the Evo stuff, is that I feel like we're right there. Like it's a firmware 2 away from being like really solid. However, if they can get these firmware updates out and push and fix these little things, then it'll be a lot better going towards the Nano and justifying that price difference. So hopefully AUTEL can get some of these things updated as quick as possible, because I know a lot of people are starting to receive their Nano Pluses. And of course, dynamic track is something that we're gonna wanna see and test out. Hopefully they'll be able to push that out sooner than later, because as we start getting later into the year and the summer, ideally there's gonna be more and more drones coming out, and it would be a shame not to see the full potential of the Nano Plus. I'm still gonna be testing this out a lot more and giving you guys my feedback on it as I fly. Of course, if you guys haven't seen my video on the Lite Plus as well, make sure you guys check that out. I definitely want to wait till dynamic track kicks in so that we could do a lot more robust testing as far as the follow me functions and the obstacle avoidance. If you guys want to see more videos on all these drones right here, I have a bunch of links down below in the video description. As always, if you guys got some value from this one, a big like would be much appreciated. This is Aldrin Stasio with FlytPath.com. I'll see you guys next video. Take care.